Hello again and welcome back to part 3. In this final part we're going to replace the capacitors on the board and then build it back up again and play a couple of games. But before we get work on the board itself, what I've done is I've printed out this diagram here, and I'll do a link at the bottom, I'll do a link underneath as to where I got this from. And what I've done here is I've printed it out, so I want to make sure that I've got all the capacitors correct. Now, if you remember, I bought a capacitor kit, and what I've done is I've taken out, in true Blue Peter style, here's one I prepared earlier, and I've written down here the total of all the capacitors that I need. I've got the capacitors together here, so there's 6 of those, 1 of those, 2 of those and 2 of those, and I've also marked on the paper here where they all go, and the values as well down here, because what I want to do is obviously to make sure that when I'm taking these capacitors off, I'm putting the right ones back in the right places. The other thing that is quite handy about this printout is next to the capacitors it tells you which is the positive side. Obviously the other side is the ground side. And just a quick reminder, when we're looking at capacitors like this, let's quickly scroll in so you can see. So it has a marking here with an arrow pointing on it, so this side is ground and this side is a positive, so you always make sure that you got the arrow pointing to the ground, which will go on the ground side. So if I hold that example capacitor there, so this doesn't go here, but if this one was to go here, we know the positive is that side, which is there, and the ground is that side, which is there. So what we can do now is we can strike up the desoldering gun, and what I'll do is I'll show you one capacitor. So we'll desolder one capacitor, and then we'll do a bit of a speeded up montage of me doing the rest. Right, so what we're going to do, we are going to replace this capacitor here, and the reason why we're going to do this one is because there's only one of them. So this is a 4.7 UF at 5 volts. As long as the capacitor voltage is slightly more, in fact this one is a 63 volt, but that's all right, as long as the voltage is the same or more and the UF is the same, then it's absolutely fine. So that goes here on C47, I think it is. Let me just check. Where's my bit of paper? It is yeah, C74. So we're going to replace that one, that capacitor just there. So that one on the other side then is just here. Sorry you can't see that. Let me just bring that in so you can see. So one of the legs is there, just there. So let me get this set up so it's a bit easier to see. Right, I've zoomed in so you can see, but if you look here, I made a little black mark on the circuit board there. That's one end of the leg, and a little black mark there, that's the other end of the leg. So they're the 2 points that we need to desolder and pop the component out. So let's do that now. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is just pop a little bit of flux on there, just to help with the solder. There we go. Now I know some people will flood a bit of normal solder on beforehand to help with the solder that melts, but what I'm going to do it without that, just to see how it goes. So it might go to plan, it might not. This is my desoldering gun, like that, and what I'm going to do is just very quickly just make sure that the end's nice and clean. There it is. Yep, that's nice and clean, which is good. Right, let's see if we can get that desoldered. Okay, that looks okay. Right, let's have a quick look. Now if we look on the, so I don't know if you can see that or not on the circuit board itself, but we can actually see down the holes of down the side of the capacitor. Now I know what you can also do on these, if you want to, you could actually chop these off, these legs off, chop there and chop there, and then you can just warm them up and desolder them, but I'm not going to do that myself. What I am going to do though is let's get this soldering iron on. Nope, I haven't got the soldering iron on, but what we'll do is we'll get the soldering iron on, we'll warm up each leg in turn, and that should just be able to pull it out the circuit board without any problems. So just wait a moment while the soldering iron warms up. Just talk amongst yourselves while the soldering iron warms up. Just make sure that the end of the soldering iron is nice and clean. Okay. So I'm just going to warm up this leg, and hopefully it should. Now I know what's going to happen is that the pliers are going to act as a heat sink. I know people are probably going to be screaming at me saying I shouldn't be doing this, I'll damage it. There we go, it's getting loose now. But what I don't want to do, I don't want to rush, and I don't want to cause any damage. I just had a thought. The leg of it is bent over slightly, so let's see if I can just straighten that up a bit. There we go, I've just pushed it through a bit as well, that's helped. Now, there is a little bit of solder still on this side, so the desoldering pump hasn't worked perfectly, so let's just see if we can get that sucked up with this. There we go, that's better. So let me just change this so you can see. I've got my magnifying glass, which is why you can see that black thing. Which is my magnifying glass. Unfortunately the old eyes aren't as good as they were. There we go, that's got it. Brilliant, okay. So, what we can see on the circuit board here as well is that there's also a plus on the board just there as well. So let's get this quickly cleaned up, and then we're ready for the next bit. Okay, that's got that nicely cleaned up. So next thing we do then is we take our capacitor and we'll just very gently just bend it either side. Don't forget we've got to make sure that we're putting it in the right way around. Remember, the positive is this side. So let me just bring my magnifying glass over again so I can see what I'm doing. And we can pop that in there. And we can pop that in there. There's the arrow pointing to the ground on that side. And there we go, that's that capacitor changed. So that was a 4.763 volts, and the one that came out was a 4.7 at 25 volts. If you can see that. There we go, 4.7 at 25 volts. Right, okay, so now that's in. Sorry about the flashing. Thank you. Right, so now that's in, we can solder that up in place. So I'll just bend the legs gently to one side. There we are. Grab our solder. And we can solder that in place. There we go, doesn't need a lot. Just check that because it's right next to that via. Just there, look, so it's right very close to that one, so just making sure that there's no short across there. And there's a track there as well, so making sure there's no short there, so that looks okay. Then we can chop that off. And there we go, that's that one capacitor change. Now we've got to do the same thing on all the others, so watch this little montage and I shall be back with you very shortly. Right, I've only done the 4 at the moment. Let's just zoom in a bit so you can see, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've just done those 4 at the moment. And what I'm going to do now, I've got the signal plugged in and the power plugged in. Just going to do a quick test just to make sure that everything is still working okay. Just change the camera so you can see. Right. Okay, so let's just switch it on, and yes, we have the copyright screen, so that's okay. So while you're doing these capacitors, it's worth just checking every now and again. Do a couple, check it, do a couple, check it, etc. just to make sure that there's no problems or you haven't caused any problems while you're soldering the capacitors in. So let's crack on, shall we? Just switch that off. Right. So I've finished doing the soldering now of the capacitors. It went all right. There was one, however, capacitor that caused me an absolute problem. And I'll show you which one it was. Let me find something to point with. Right, here we go. It was this capacitor here on the edge. So let's have a close look at that one and I'll show you why. If I move this across. Now from the look on this side of the board, it doesn't look like it caused a problem. But let me turn the board over and you can see why. So this connects to this big ground plate here, look. And because this ground plate, you can see my solder is not particularly great, but this ground plate here just absolutely absorbed all the heat from the soldering iron and caused a massive problem trying to get the old solder out, not put the new solder in, to get the old solder out. It was terrible. It absolutely took me ages, but eventually what I had to do is to put loads of flux on there. I had to put a dab of fresh solder on there, and then I had to use my desoldering gun on both sides and try it both sides, and eventually I managed to clear the hole. I was very careful though, because too much heat and you can actually lift the pads, so you got to put the heat on, but you can't put too much heat on. So what we need to do now is I'll pop that on there. Right, power and the signal cable. Right, let me turn the lights going off. Okay, so all the capacitors changed. Let's turn it on for a test. And yep, there it is. That's the screen up. That's okay. That's got the copyright up there. Great. Okay, let me turn that off and move the camera back. The light is coming back on. Watch your eyes, please. Light is back on again. Right, so we know that this is now working. So what have we done? Well, we've done quite a bit. We've replaced the power regulator here that regulates it from 9 volts down to 5 volts. This is a modern one and doesn't need the big heatsink. This is off a different one, but there's one of the big heat sinks. I can't see the one that came off this one immediately. But anyway, the big heat sink that went across the back here, that's all gone now. Oh, there it is, look. Ta-da! So, because that's gone, the ULA here will actually run at a lower heat, because the heat sink used to go over the ULA and that used to trap a bit of heat. So hopefully that should be a bit cooler now as well. We've done the mod for the video out, done the capacitors as well, and of course don't forget we have replaced the keyboard membrane on that side. So the next thing we need to do is put it back together again. I almost forgot, one quick thing I want to do before I put it back together again is just to clean up the edge connector. So let's get rid of that. So we're going to use a bit of IPA. There's a little squirt on there. Get our toothbrush and just give it a nice clean on there. Do the same on the reverse side. There we go. Let's give it a nice clean. So we can now put it back together again. Okay, so that sits in there like that. Get our screws, and there was a specific screw that you went in the circuit board, it's quite a small one. Pops in down there. And where's my little screwdriver gone? Here it is. Okay, so that's not in the right place, so get that in the right place again. There, that feels better. Yep, that feels better. Let's try that again. There we go. Right, okay, so that's got the board in. So next thing we need to do is bring the keyboard over. Just have to excuse my hands in the way, but all I'm doing is just slotting the keyboard in, the ribbon cable in. There we go. Pop that over there. Now all I'm going to do is just going to put a couple of screws in, that's all, just to hold it back on. That keeps slipping, so let me just get a better screwdriver on that. That's better. So I've not done them over tight, I've just put them on gently, because what I want to do, like we've been doing all the way through this, is just powering it up and double checking that it's still working okay. And what we can also do at this point is just do a double check on the keyboard. So I'm just going to switch it on, and Yeah, I can assure you that the screen is still correct. There we go. So what I'm going to do now is put the test cartridge in. And I want to do a bit of a better check on the specky. Right. Okay, so hopefully you should be able to see that okay. So this is slightly different to the one we used last time, but it's still going to do a check, RAM test. So the first 16K is okay. It's now done 48K. I'm going to let it run all the way through. I might fast forward this bit. And as you can see, that went through all the tests absolutely fine. So let's do a keyboard test. Yeah, okay, so the keyboard's working. I don't know why it didn't go into keyboard test mode though when we switched it on, but as you can see, all the keys are in fact working. So see if I can remember how to do this. Here we go, delete. 10, print. Right, okay, so Hello World is working all right. So that is actually working. What I'll do next is I'll put the rest of the screws in and then we'll do a bit of a better test. So I'll come back to you in a minute. Right, we're back with the other tester, so let's try the keyboard out on this one. So would you be absolutely sure? So let me just adjust this so you can see a bit better. Okay, so let's do all the keys. And you can see as I'm pressing them on the keyboard, they're changing on the screen. Brilliant. Okay, so that's fantastic. So that is now done. We can now try a game. Let's try a different game. So we just love that tune. Okay, let's see if I can remember which keys it is. Not them two. Not that one. Thank you. There we go. There we go. Got there eventually. So there we go. That is the repair finish. That's 3 videos. The repair and a slight upgrade to the ZX Spectrum 48K. We replace the capacitors. Oh, I'll just show you very quickly why we need to replace the capacitors. So bear with me while I just finish this level, because you've got to do the level. Oh, I missed it. Oh, no. Right, okay, let me show you why we have to change capacitors. So a quick word about capacitors. This is one of the capacitors that was on the board, and without me actually starting to desolder it or anything, just as I was poking on the board, the leg came off, and that's how fragile this particular capacitor was. I couldn't believe it. That was just about to break. So that's one reason why you must replace them. Let's also have a look at this. This is my component tester, and what I've done is I've taken one of the old capacitors. This is 100 UF at 16 volt, and what I've done is I've soldered a couple of the legs that we cut off the new ones just to make it a bit easier. This is a brand new 100 UF, so let's put that in the tester and see what the tester says. Just takes a few seconds for it to come up, and that's a 98.17, as close to 100 as you can get. So that's okay, that's fine. And then we can pop this one in. So this is the one that I took off the board, and we'll test that one as well. Again, takes a few seconds, and there you go, 163 UF. That is a capacitor that is going. Remember, it's supposed to be 100, 163 that one is. So I wouldn't like to keep those capacitors on the board for much longer, because they were definitely going. And we have another one here. So this is a 22 UF, or should be a 22 UF. Pop that in for testing. So that's a nearly 30. It's supposed to be 22. So as you can see, these are capacitors that are starting to break down. It wouldn't surprise me that, you know, the Spectrums were made in the 80s, but if you get a Spectrum, that is one of the reasons why you should replace it. That's probably me not putting them in right. Do that again. So this is a new one. There we go, 23, supposed to be 22. That's close enough, that's okay. So there you have it. That's why we replace capacitors, or most people replace capacitors when the components are starting to break down, and you don't want components breaking down because they will make your equipment break down. So there you go, that is our Specky. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you like what I do. If you do, please give us a thumbs up, please subscribe, please comment below, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.